If you notice, prior to the fact that David went into this state of fasting and praying, laying on the ground. But in spite of that, prior to that we already read in the text, the word of the Lord came through the prophet Nathan and told him that the child was going to die.
Yeah, that's right.
He had already told him. But David within himself,
Jesus.
even though he knew, amen, the verdict, even though he knew the outcome of the situation, what it would be, in spite of knowing what he knew, he still thought that God would show some kind of favor towards him.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes when God is speaking to us, even though he may be speaking to us through me, myself as the pastor, or he may be using someone else at the moment to speak to you about a certain situation, and you know within yourself that this is coming from God.
Yes, you do.
But then we don't want the answer, we don't want what they're saying to us at the time. So we think by if we go another way, then we're going to get a different result. But when God instructs you on a specific thing, you can bank on it.
Yes, you can.
Because God had already told the prophet that the child was going to die.
Yes, he is.
But prior to that, if you go back into the text, you'll see that he said that adversity will not depart from thy house.
Yes.
Some things transpire in our own houses, even in our spiritual houses, is based upon the decisions that we have previously made.
That's right.
And David had, if you look at the text, he didn't have a wife. The Bible says he had wives. God bless it quiet.
Right.
Thank God, ladies, that is not set up like that anymore. Because we think if you got one husband to deal with it, and it's just you and him, could you imagine if it was permitted in this day and age? Amen. Even though some cultures still practice certain things with having multiple wives based on their cultural identity and how they define, amen, relationships. And to some cultures, as long as he could take care of the woman, then he could wife her. He could have 2 or 3 or 4 wives, depending on how many he can take care of. But aren't you glad that we're part of a different culture?
I'm glad.
Could you imagine
I'm glad.
being in a house with 2 other women outside of you?
I don't think so.
Could you imagine that? Sharing your bed, your refrigerator, your private spaces with somebody else, and it's okay? But in this particular time, God permitted it.
Yeah.
But David used his position of authority to take something that belonged to somebody else. And sometimes people will use their positions of authority to take advantage of those that's under them. We see it in the governmental system. Sometimes we can see it in the work system, or we can see it in some type of commerce that we may do. We've seen it in the banking systems. We've seen it in many systems, even in the medical systems. We'll see where you should be getting one prescription because based on your insurance, you can't get the good drug or what we call medication. But they got to give you the other drug. So instead of the 3-day, you got to get the 10-day. Amen, somebody. And that's how some things work. But even though they work that way, it still comes a consequence. It's like we still dealing with COVID, even though we don't have to wear as many masks, even though we relaxed on a lot of things, even though a lot of us may be asymptomatic now, and the vaccine may be working to some degree, but guess what? It's still other things that are going on in the land. Why? Because people think that they can do certain things behind closed doors and think that they're going to get away with it. But God has an all-seeing eye. And he used this prophet Nathan to let him know that you took this man. And the Bible said that David, he referred to David as if he killed him with a sword. Ain't that what the scripture said?
That's what he said.
Based a plot. And it went as far as David wanted to call Uriah home.
Yes.
And come lay with his wife.
Oh, yes,
But if you go back to the beginning of the text, the Bible says it was at a time when kings were supposed to go to war. Number one, he shouldn't have been home. He should have been out there on the battlefield with his army, but he decided to stay home on a furlough. Then he wanted to bring Uriah. After the fact, he'd have slept with his man's wife.
yes, he did.
Bring him home and let him lay with his wife, and we'll be able to fix this.
Yeah.
So now she's gonna be pregnant with David, baby, but Uriah gonna think it's his baby, and we're gonna smooth everything on out. Because he's a part of my army, we'll work it out. Don't worry about it. He'll have two daddies.
That's what he thought.
He was trying to fix it. And sometimes that's what the enemy will try to do. He'll try to fix things to work against you or fix things to cause more misery in your life.
Yes, he will.
But Uriah, like some of us, we're so dedicated.
Yeah.
Uriah wanted to go back out and fight with his brothers. So David had another plan. Oh, the enemy don't stop working, saints of God. He don't stop working against you. When one thing don't work, they'll pull a whole nother policy out that ain't even part of the other policies. Hey man, come on, let me tell you something. Even in the world, there are three books. There's the book, there's your book, and there's their book. The only book you're going to physically see is the book. Then, if you're not smart enough, they're going to start using a whole nother book that you don't have no clue about.
That's right.
That's how they work things. Amen. Even in corporate America and other aspects of America. And then sometimes we wonder how these things happen. And we sit around scratching our heads about how can they do that? Let me tell you how they do that. Because they plot at other times. Amen. And then all of a sudden now you say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, but there's always a loophole somewhere. Why do you think you need an attorney to straighten things out? If it was based on the truth, then all of it would take is just the truth. But it takes somebody to represent on your behalf in order to straighten the matter out.
Yes, yes, yes.
If it was just based on truth, we could do like Solomon. Remember when the two women had a child and the other woman laid on her baby and killed the baby, and then the other woman had the baby, and then Solomon said, okay, let's cut the baby in half.